name is Miss Monique and I would like to welcome you today to Storytime with a Twist. Before we get started, I would like to have everyone find a piece of rectangular paper. It doesn't have to be blank paper. We're just going to do some folding with it in a little bit. So just a rectangular sheet of paper will work great. Our first story for today is called Norman the Slug with the Silly Shell. Today's storytime theme is about flying, so we'll see how that relates to Norman. Norman the Slug thought snails were great. "Wow," said Norman, "look at them, they're amazing." But unfortunately, the snails didn't think Norman was so great. Whee! Crash! "Norman, you silly slug," they cried, "you've spoiled our fun. This only works if you've got a shell." Norman felt left out. Sadly, he skulked off into the moonlight. "If only I had a shell of my own," he sighed, looking at his reflection. And that's when he had an idea. "Maybe I could have a shell after all," he thought. But finding a shell was not as easy as it seemed. One was too bouncy, one was too noisy, and one was already taken. Norman needed time to think. Ta-da! A shell! It was perfect. Norman had never been happier. He could join the snails at last. Norman loved being a snail, and the snails loved Norman's silly shell. But the fun didn't last for long. Suddenly there was a loud flapping of wings. "Look out! Bird!" cried the snails in panic. "Quick, slither for your lives or we'll end up as supper." But the bird was more interested in Norman's silly shell. It looked delicious. Norman was being carried up, up, and away, higher and higher into the sky. What could he do? Norman did the only thing a slug could do. He made slime, lots and lots of it. With a slither and a slather, a slip and a slide, Norman was free! But he was falling faster and faster and faster until... plunk! "Norman, Norman, are you okay?" asked the snails. "Wow," said Norman, "that was great. I love flying. If only I had wings." Ta-da! That's silly, silly snail. Okay, now let's grab our piece of paper and we're going to do an activity together. So, have you ever made a paper airplane before? Because we're going to do that today. You may need a hard surface. You could use the floor. I have a clipboard here on my lap today. So with your rectangular shaped piece of paper, we're going to fold it in half the long way, just like this. Some people call that a hot dog bun. Then we're going to open our paper back up and bring one corner to the center of our crease that we just made. So it goes down like so. We're going to do the same on the other side, bringing it up toward the crease. So now we have an arrow. We'll do that one more time. We're going to bring the top, folding it down, and aligning that arrow with the center crease. So this goes down to here. And we'll do that one more time with the other side. So now we have an even pointier arrow, and it's starting to look like a flat airplane. Maybe the top of the airplane. Okay, from here we'll fold it in half again. So get to fold it back on our crease that we originally made, like this. From here, we're going to take the back of the plane and fold it down again to that center line where we made that crease. So this lines up with this, like that. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. And if you need to, you can pause or rewind those instructions to slow it down a little. And there we have it. We do these quite a bit in our house. My kids like to have a contest and see which airplane goes the farthest. So another thing that we do at home is we like to color them. So feel free, you can color it, decorate it up, and then you can see how far your plane will fly. We'll come back to that at the end. Okay, so our last story for today is called After the Fall. And if you're familiar with Humpty Dumpty, you know that he fell off the wall. This is a story of how Humpty Dumpty got back up again. And in this story, the flying that we talk about has two meanings. We talk about flying like a bird or an airplane, but we also talk about flying. In this case, he is working to overcome a fear that he has. So let's hear how that works out for him. My name is Humpty Dumpty. This was my favorite spot, high up on the wall. I know it's an odd place for an egg to be, but I loved being close to the birds. One day I fell. I'm sort of famous for that part. Folks called it the Great Fall, which sounds a little grand. It was just an accident, but it changed my life. Fortunately, all the king's men managed to put me back together. Well, most of me. There were some parts that couldn't be healed with bandages and glue. After that day, I became afraid of heights. I was so scared that it kept me from enjoying some of my favorite things. I walked past the wall every day, and I would think about climbing that ladder again. I really missed the birds and being high above the city, but I could never do it because I knew that accidents can happen. I eventually settled for watching the birds from the ground. It wasn't the same, but it was better than nothing. Then, one day, an idea flew by. Making planes was harder than I thought. It was easy to get cuts and scratches, but day after day I kept trying and trying. Until I got it just right. My plane was perfect and it flew like nothing could stop it. I hadn't felt that happy in a long time. It wasn't the same as being up in the sky with the birds, but it was close enough. Unfortunately, accidents happen. They always do. I almost walked away again, but then I thought about all the time I'd spent working on my plane and all the other things I'd missed. I decided I was going to climb that wall. But the higher I got, the more nervous I felt. I didn't want to admit it. I was terrified. I didn't look up, I didn't look down, I just kept climbing, one step at a time. Until I was no longer afraid. Maybe now you won't think of me as that egg who was famous for falling. Crack, crack. Hopefully, you'll remember me as the egg who got back up. And learned how to fly. The end. That was a pretty cool story. Thank you so much for being with me today. You can practice with your airplanes now. Take care.